Cesar Chavez was born on March 31st, 1927, in Yuma, Arizona. He was named after his grandfather, Cesario. He was the son of Juan Estrada and Librado Chavez. After the family lost their home during the Great Depression, they would end up moving to California to become migrant farm workers. During the next years, the family lived in tents, shacks, labor camps, and even spare rooms, whatever his mom, Juana, could find. She always insisted that the children go to school even though they worked on the fields on the weekends and summers. Unfortunately, Chavez had to quit school in the 8th grade in 1942 because he did not want his mom working the fields after his father was injured in an accident. It was here in Brawley, California, that Cesar would become a full-time migrant worker and get a glimpse of the harsh working conditions laborers would face every day. He would end up joining the United States Navy in hope of learning new skills that would help once he returned to civilian life. This turned out not to be the case, and he would label this time as the 2 worst years of my life.
In 1948, Cesar married Helen Fabula. They settled in Delano and started their family, where he met and was influenced by Father McDonald. They talked about farm workers and strikes. Cesar began reading about St. Francis and Gandhi and nonviolence. After Father McDonald came another very influential person, Fred Ross. Cesar became an organizer for Ross Organization, the community service organization, where he started off work with voter registration. He later left and co-founded the National Farm Workers Association with Dolores Huerta. It was later called the United Farm Workers from 1952 to 1976. He fought for rights of Mexican Americans who worked on the fields. On September 8, 1965, Cesar supported the Delano grape strike to protest for higher wages. 6 months later, Cesar and the NFWA led a strike of grape pickers from California on a historic march from Delano to California state capitol for similar goals. In the early 1970s, the UFW organized strikes and boycotts, including the Salad Bowl strike, the largest farm workers strike in the U.S. history to protest for, and later win. Higher wages for those farm workers who were working for grape and lettuce growers. Chavez undertook a number of fasts. In 1968, he fasted for 25 days, promoting the principle of nonviolence. Chavez started a fast for Thanksgiving and Hope in 1972 to prepare for a prearranged civil disobedience by farm workers.
The UFW during Chavez's tenure was committed to restricting immigration. Chavez and Dolores Huerta, co-founder of the UFW, fought the Bracero program that existed from 1942 to 1964. Their position stemmed from their belief that the program undermined American workers and exploited the migrant workers. Their efforts contributed to Congress ending the Bracero program in 1964. In 1973, the UFW was one of the first labor unions to oppose proposed employer sanctions that would have prohibited hiring illegal aliens. Later, during the 1980s, while Chavez was still working alongside Huerta, he was in part the influence to getting the amnesty provisions into the 1986 Federal Immigration Act. There were a few concerns that illegal alien labor would undermine UFW strike campaigns. This led to a number of controversial events which the UFW describes as anti-strike breaking events. This was also interpreted as being anti-immigrant. Chavez and the members of the UFW marched through the Imperial and Coachella valleys to the border of Mexico to protest growers' use of illegal aliens as strikebreakers in 1969. In 1973, the United Farm Workers set up a wet line along the United States-Mexico border to prevent Mexican immigrants from entering the United States illegally. This was done to prevent any conflict in the UFW's unionization efforts. In mid-1976, the California Agricultural Labor Relations Board ran out of its budgeted money for the year.
Some of the problems that we're confronted with, to bring you a message from the farm workers and to ask you to support us. I want to recommend to you and tell you, in case you should not know, that the grape boycott is over, and that grapes are really very healthy and very good for you, and that if you eat grapes, you'll create more jobs for us, and that we need. But also, I have to admit that the growers were right and we were wrong when they accused us that if they used to say a few years back, today grapes, what tomorrow? And they used to say that we'll boycott grapes today and tomorrow there'll be something else and after tomorrow something else. And so not to disappoint them, we are boycotting lettuce, non-union lettuce.
This was a result of a massive amount of work in setting up farm workers' elections. The California legislature refused to provide more money, so the ALRB closed for the year. Chavez gathered signatures in order to place Proposition 14 on the ballot, which would guarantee the right of union organizers to visit and recruit farm workers. This proposition went before California voters in November 1976, but was defeated by a 2-1 margin. Due to the failure of Proposition 14, Chavez decided that the UFW suffered from disloyalty, poor motivation, and lack of communication. He felt that the union needed to turn into a movement. This ended up backfiring. This was seen by human rights advocates and religious leaders as a vicious dictatorship. Chavez attempted another grape boycott in 1988 to protest the exposure of farm workers to pesticides. Bumper stickers reading "No grapes" or "Uvas no" were widespread. The boycott failed, and as a result, Chavez then started his last fast. He fasted for 35 days before others convinced him to start eating again. He lost 30 pounds by the end of the last fast and caused health problems. This might have contributed to his death.
Cesar Chavez died peacefully in his sleep on April 23, 1993, near Yuma, Arizona, a short distance from his small family farm in the Gila River Valley, where he was born more than 66 years before. He was in Yuma helping UFW attorneys defend the union against a lawsuit brought by Bruce Church Inc., which was a giant Salinas, California-based lettuce and vegetable producer. Mr. Church was demanding that the farm workers pay millions of dollars in damage because of the boycott in the 1980s. Cesar Chavez, never wanting to back out of a fight for something he believed in so strongly, was there to fight the good fight. It was here where he would eventually get his final bittersweet victory. Cesar gave his last ounce of strength defending the farm workers in this case, stated his successor, UFW President Arturo Rodriguez, who was with him in Arizona during the trial. He died standing up for the First Amendment right to speak out for themselves.
He believed in his heart that the farm workers were right in boycotting Bruce Church Incorporated lettuce during the 1980s, and he was determined to prove that in the court. The second multi-million-dollar judgment for the church was later thrown out by an appeals court. The company later signed the UFW contract in May 1996. This goes to show that this man gave his last breath taking a stand for rights of immigrant farm workers. The fight is never about grapes or lettuce, it is always about people. During the time of his boycotts, rallies, strikes, Cesar Chavez was not viewed as a hero by all. Most of his work went unnoticed and seemed not to have an impact on the whole country. However, on September 8, 1994, President Bill Clinton presented Chavez with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. His widow, Helen Chavez, received an award. Chavez was also inducted into the California Hall of Fame on December 6, 2006 by California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and First Lady Maria Shriver. March 31st is Cesar Chavez's birthday and is considered a state holiday in California, Colorado, and Texas. Many state government offices, community colleges, and libraries are closed. Many public schools, but not all, in the 3 states are also closed. Chavez Day is an optional holiday in Arizona. President Barack Obama proclaimed March 31st Cesar Chavez Day in the United States, with Americans being urged to observe this day with appropriate service, community, and educational programs to honor Cesar Chavez's enduring legacy, although it is not a federal holiday.